Hello, everyone. This is Cameron Smith from TechLogix here today to go through another 15 to 20 minute long webinar. This one's on eSports. And for me, this is a very interesting topic. I'm not a gamer per se. I don't spend a lot of time playing video games or, really researching video game technology or the sort. But I am really versed on fiber optics. I do follow a lot of data. I have been in the audiovisual industry, both on the consumer side and the commercial side for, a couple of decades now. And one of the things that I found is the whole phenomenon of esports is really, really interesting. And it's definitely a needle mover, regardless of the different industries that you may be focusing on. If you're dealing with audiovisual electronics, consumer, professional, commercial, residential, we're seeing this really impact the installations. And we'll spend about 15 to 20 minutes going through the topic around the technology, the size of the industry, why this is a needle mover. We'll explore that. But before we get going here, I do want to mention that this is being recorded today. You will get a link to the recording. Feel free to share that with other folks. You may be watching this webinar recorded live from the TechLogix website. That's perfectly okay. But if you are watching this live, I want to make sure that you know that you can ask questions. You may be muted, but you can type those into the GoToWebinar software. Should pop up on your screen. We'll get to those at the end of the session, or depending on the complexity of the question, we'll engage you one-on-one kind of afterwards and make sure you get your information and you're able to move forward. Let's start today by discussing what this industry looks like. What exactly are we talking about when we say esports? And it is very important that we differentiate consumer home video gaming with the more professional, organized world that we call esports. So specifically, when we're talking about this, and as we go through the material over the next 15 minutes or so, we are talking about more of a commercial application, not buying a video game system, putting it in your house, using it, having your kids use it, have your neighbors use it. It's not exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about schools, universities, commercial facilities, private institutions, public institutions. We're talking about using video gaming in a competitive way, but more importantly, in a revenue generating way. And one of the things that you're finding with this is there's a lot of revenue behind it. So an industry that really didn't exist a couple years ago, at least not in what we would call a defined proper way, this is growing. This is gaining some pretty major legs. So here in the United States, where we're located, where a lot of our customers are located, last year, 2019, this was 1.25 billion in revenue, not the consumer world, but the professional world. So we're talking about schools and universities that are creating esports programs. And there's scholarships around this. So $15 million last year went to scholarships where universities are recruiting people to come in, participate in a formal esports program. We're seeing a lot of growth in this market. 37% of the worldwide growth will be in North America, at least it's projected over the next 4 years. So there's a lot of movement here. We're seeing places that you'd normally think of, okay, we're going to have a sports program like football, like baseball, like basketball. Well, esports is becoming part of that. And schools, universities are finding that this generates revenue. There's a lot of people interested in this topic, but it doesn't stop there. It also affects other buildings and other industries and sectors, as we'll see here in a minute. But if we really want to define, does this have legs? Is this just something that we're talking about, creating a little bit of momentum in the educational space? Well, no, not quite. So we can actually compare worldwide viewership, people who tune in and watch channels like Twitch and some of these other, streaming ways to watch gaming or streaming ways to watch what we would call traditional sports like baseball, basketball, football. So League of Legends, okay, this is one of those tournaments, an esports tournament. This had higher viewership than a lot of more traditional sports that we would think of. So we're talking about 58 million viewers tuned in last year to watch this tournament live. We can compare that against the NFL, which still had higher numbers, but also against MLB, NBA, NHL. Well, guess what? Professional gaming, eSports, pulled in higher viewership. And as we know, when you have viewership, you also have revenue attached to this. So it's real and it's growing and it's moving really fast. But let's not just dwell on the educational space. Let's not just dwell on online streaming. Let's talk about some of the other markets, because I know that there's folks who are watching this webinar today. Great. You don't do university work. You don't do K-12 work. Well, where are we also seeing this affect really our installations outside of that consumer market? Well, hospitality. This is interesting because you're seeing restaurants, bars, food service facilities that are now starting to incorporate gaming into what they do. And, you know, we look at this as kind of a specialty restaurant, specialty niche, but just like going to the restaurant, the bar to watch your favorite game, people are starting to do that with gaming. People are also starting to organize regional, local, national, international conventions and events around this industry that's really starting to move fast. And you're seeing stadiums and auditoriums, facilities that are specifically designed and built for gaming. This is a little bit of a departure because we're talking about millions of dollars that are being put into facilities that are designed specifically and for the sole purpose of gaming events. Historically, what we saw before is, yes, you'd have a multi-purpose facility. You'd have, you know, maybe a basketball arena that would be repurposed once per year or on a kind of an intermittent basis. Well, now you're seeing those facilities are designed, built. You have a dedicated facility just for esports, just for gaming. But the one that I find that's very interesting here on this list, shopping centers, shopping malls. We know what's happening to retail, at least here in the United States, right? We're seeing what used to be these, you know, burgeoning facilities, these places where everybody would go and buy their clothes and household items and spend a lot of money. Well, it's migrating to an online world, online presence. So you've got developers now who are looking at this real estate and saying, all right, what are we going to do with this? And a lot of the plans are incorporating esports into it. So there's a lot of movement here, you know, and a lot of people are surprised that this touches so many different facilities that it does, but also you got $1.25 billion in spend last year, 2019. It's only going to be growing. It's accelerating faster than ever with more people being at home, being less close in terms of proximity. So this is getting some major legs. So let's turn the conversation over to the technology itself, okay? There is technology that is highly developed and really specifically made and ideal for an esports environment. And while this technology, you know, we didn't build fiber specifically saying, hey, I'm going to make this for gaming, it really gives you a lot of benefits. And we're seeing it incorporated in a lot of different places, whether you are doing that consumer application. You know, I need to make sure that I'm pulling cable. So, you know, my customer who likes to play video games on the weekend, you know, they have a really good experience. Or, hey, I am doing an auditorium. I am doing a classroom. I am doing a facility where this is really important to the central tenet of my design, my installation. Why fiber? Why are we seeing fiber optics in esports? So there's a couple of different reasons. First of all, latency plays into this. Whether you're dealing with networking, whether you're dealing with video distribution, you got to have 0 frame rate latency. That means that when a signal goes from point A, it's got to get to point B instantaneously, no delay. You move the mouse, it has to be synced to what you're seeing on the screen. And we're not even talking about the traditional AV world where you're dealing with like 30 milliseconds of delay. That's okay. No, we've got to have instantaneous feedback. And that's one of the nice things about optics, right? We're dealing with lasers. We're dealing with glass tubes. We're dealing with speed of light driving incredibly fast signals. Now, bandwidth also plays into that. Resolution plays into that. And interestingly, video gaming is where we see some of the highest resolutions most quickly affecting installation. So we talk about 4K, we talk about 8K. Well, guess what? Now we're talking about 12K and 16K because those specifications have been released. And you may be kind of laughing about this, watching this webinar after the fact because it's 2021 and we already have 12K, we already have 16K displays. But today, April 2020, yeah, we're seeing 8K, and actually 8K is a part of gaming because as you're rendering your images, you're getting into those ultra high resolution displays and ultra high resolution graphics. Now, it's not just processing speeds, as we've mentioned. It's not just communication speeds, which ties into the latency conversation, but it's also reliability, overall reliability. If you are doing gaming professionally, if you are competing in an event, it's incredibly important that you have reliability that will make or break your experience, right? That'll make or break the event that you're participating in. So reliability is important, but you're also seeing the length of signal distribution. So interesting fact, DisplayPort, that plays into a lot of what we do in the PC world. DisplayPort max length on cables, what's the spec? 3 meters, 10 feet. That's not very long in terms of signal distribution. A lot of people who come to these training sessions, we think of HDMI. What's the max spec on HDMI? Well, it depends on the version, but usually you're under 50 feet. If we're doing a stadium, if we're doing hospitality, if we're doing, education, odds are you're going to start exceeding those specifications. And even for things like networking, because you're dealing with internet in this conversation. So you've got to extend those distances as well. So are we future-proofing here, right? Is fiber future-proofing? Should we be thinking about something else? And I always incorporate this slide because I think it's very telling. And I would also encourage you, if you're completely new to fiber, you've never really worked with it before, or you don't know a lot of the terminology or the acronyms or, the whole world of fiber optics, it's pretty new to most people in the AV world. I encourage you to watch some videos online. We have good training sessions, pre-recorded. You can go to the TechLogix website. You'll see a link at the end. Watch some videos, get some information. We're happy to walk you through this, but there's a lot on this topic. But here's the punchline, 100 petagigs worth of data. If you pull a modern fiber optic cable, you have up to 100 petagigs worth of data that can be deployed for AV, video, audio, control, networking. It really can handle all of these signals that you're throwing at it. And that's 10,000 times more bandwidth capacity than what you'd see out of a Cat7 cable, for example. So you're moving signals near the speed of light. You have a lot of bandwidth capacity in these optical cables, which really makes it ideal for pulling a cable that you can upgrade in the future. So let's talk about some of these technologies, right? What do we use? What are you seeing out there? Well, cables are built with fiber optics now. You're seeing HDMI cables. You're seeing DisplayPort cables. These are built with an optical core. It's not like your traditional cable that, it's going to have a copper core and a bunch of shielding and be pretty bulky and, max out at 3 meters or, 50 feet or whatever the distance limitation is going to be. No, these are optical cables. These leverage an optical core to send your signals from point A to point B, and they're pre-built. So you just plug them in, just like a regular HDMI or DisplayPort cable. Now, these are really easy to use, pretty affordable now, but they do have one limitation that I always make sure people understand. Being a cable, being an all-in-one solution, these have a chip in them. They've got an HDMI or DisplayPort chip. That means these cannot be upgraded. When you put these cables into an installation, they will do whatever that chip says they can do. They cannot do more than that. So you're really locking your cable run into a particular HDMI or DisplayPort specification. Now, bulk fiber, on the other hand, this is different. There is no HDMI chip. There is no video processing chip. There is no limitation. This is what we're talking about when we say 100 petagigs worth of data capacity. bulk fiber. The same cables that you would use for networking, you can use for video distribution. I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. You can use for USB distribution. I'll show you that as well. These are regular network cables, okay? They have a generic optical core inside. They will take a laser, whatever type of signal you're trying to send, and they will go from point A to point B. And for folks who are not familiar with modern optical cables, first of all, they're not that expensive. They're not that hard to integrate. You can terminate these things in about a minute. You can even get them pre-made. So that means they're going to arrive, cut to length, already with the connectors on. You plug them in. Now you got to plug them into something, some electronics on both ends. But they're also incredibly durable. That's what surprises a lot of folks. You know, they think fiber optic cables, they're really breakable and you got to handle them with care and, you know, hopefully you don't shatter them because you're going to get glass all over the place. Well, optics don't work that way anymore. And what you see in modern cables like this, over 100-pound pull rating, you know, you can literally tie them in knots, wrap them around your finger. They're not going to break. They're built with Kevlar, so they're incredibly strong. And that bulk cable, while it can be used for networking, which is incredibly important for speed, it can also be used for video distribution. And these are the type of products that you're starting to see hit the market that allows you to really unlock that fully uncompressed 4K video, that 8K video. And because it uses bulk fiber, you can repurpose that cable in the future for 12K or 16K or, you know, maybe a different type of networking or maybe, you know, IR, RS-232 controller, whatever it may be in the future. Now, fibers also gives you some reliability benefits too. It's immune to static. It's immune to surges. It's immune to lightning. It's immune to RF noise and electromagnetic noise. So this all plays into that overall conversation. And again, because we're using lasers to send our signals, we're going really long distances. So you get into those big facilities, yes, you are distributing HDMI literally miles if you want to do that. And prices start around $400 a set. So it's not terribly expensive anymore. One thing I do want to point out, if you've never seen an HDMI, for example, over fiber extender, they look a lot like the HD-based T products that you've seen and worked with for years. So they've got ports for HDMI and audio, you know, control ports. All of this is built into the product. The difference is instead of plugging it into an RJ45, a twisted pair cable, you're plugging it into a fiber optic cable. This is what you're seeing. This is one of the ways that you're taking, you know, ultra high definition video, you're taking really fast networking speeds, you're putting it together, you're using that optical cable. USB's got to be part of the conversation. The reality is in the eSports world, you have gaming towers, you have gaming PCs. Well, computers, we use USB. And USB, much like DisplayPort, you're limited to 15 to 16 feet max distance length. So USB, I mean, technically it's 5 meters, okay? So 5 meters is your max distance on a USB cable. Well, if you're doing peripherals, keypads, keyboards, mice, trackpads, even things like cameras, right? You're seeing a lot of USB cameras being implemented. You got to extend more than 5 meters in length. You also have to make sure that you're handling the speeds. Fiber delivers all of that bandwidth, distances, plus that immunity that we talked about. So USB over fiber extenders, this also plays into that conversation. So if we put this all together, what are we seeing here, right? First of all, the market's a big, big market. Massive, massive opportunity that's going to impact not only the consumer world. We think of video gaming consumer. Esports is commercial. It's professional. It is a revenue generating industry that's driving $1.25 billion a year, and that's only going to accelerate, right? So this is real. This is moving. This is going really fast. A lot of good information online. But we use fiber for a number of different reasons. Bandwidth, signal distance, reliability. You know, you get the immunity to all of these different issues that you would normally see, at least historically, with a copper-based system. So this will impact most people's business. We kind of look at this and we say, how are we going to take advantage of this? Because I know it's coming into my projects. Well, think about optics, think about fiber, think about the different accessories that go with it. Because, frankly, we have to think this way for not only reliability, but distances and ultimately those video and those network bandwidth. So how do we get more information, right? We only had 20 minutes today, 20 minutes today. I encourage you to visit the TechLogix website. You see that on the screen. You can watch termination videos. You can download brochures around this. You can download application guides. There's a lot of good educational material. Feel free to reach out to us. We spend a lot of time on this technology. We actually develop these optical engines and the different cabling infrastructure. So feel free to use us. We're here to educate. We know this is new to most people, not just the eSports category, but fiber optics in general. We're here for you. I don't see any questions coming in. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Hopefully this was of value. Have a great rest of your day. Feel free to reach out. Thanks. Take care.